Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I want to start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today, I'm joined by Richard Keeney. Now, I first met Richard at the National Automotive Dealers Association too many years ago. Now, Richard is one half of the Markee Group, and these were guys that really pioneered video training. When I met these guys at this booth, they were sending out a video a day. And when I say a video, I'm talking about an actual video a day to dealerships, to sales managers. And we struck up a great friendship with the Markee Group. And I got to say, part of Simco Training, all of our online sales training program comes from the Markee Group. So it is just my pleasure today to finally have Richard Keeney on the podcast. Richard, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And it's so good to see you. It's only on a screen, but it's been a treat knowing you for 25, 30 years.
Has it been that long? Goodness me. It has been that long. So listen, the people who don't know you, Richard, how long have you been in the motor trade? Must be 40 odd years. Did you start? Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started in the motor trade?
Sure. 46 years is my,
cool.
I believe how the math would work. And what it is I was kind of independent, free-spirited, working different. I'm sorry about that.
That's good.
Okay. Actually, I got in the business about 46 years ago, and I remember I made a phone call to my stepbrother who was running a store, and I was about 21 years old, and said that I do believe it's time for me to make some real money,
yes,
compared to what I was making at the time. And just I kind of asked him, point me in the right direction, and he did. And I was very fortunate to be pointed in the direction of a gentleman named Joe Hardman that got me kicked off. But I was in sales for about 3 years. And anyway, that's it was just kind of on a whim. I called thinking, you know what, I'd like to see if I can make sales.
Yeah. So what did you do before the motor trade? What was cars a passion or hobby, or no, you just need to get it out of what you're doing and make some proper money, as you said?
Always loved automobiles, but and was intrigued with. I can remember as a kid, before I was even able to drive a car, for some reason, I found myself studying cars just in traffic or in parking lots, and it became a game and a sport to me to point out to people, again, before I was of driving age, and to start telling them what car was coming and went by and this, that, and the other. I don't know. That's just, I guess I was a little bit intrigued right off the bat, and it became a game and a sport to me to kind of, learn all the vehicles.
Cool. Now, I find this question really separates the true motor car dealers and the people that have it in their blood. Do you remember the first car you sold?
That would have been in a late 78. But yeah, and it's interesting because I don't remember the first car that I delivered, because that one was probably a hand-holding process.
Yes.
And somebody helped me to that degree. But the first one that I sold was, and it sticks in my mind because about prejudging, curb qualifying, plate glassing, all those little cliches, was I was probably less than 30 days in the business. And there was a lady, I even remember her last name, that pulled up in the rain. Now, I was the new kid on the block in the rain. She was in an old beater station wagon. Well, unbeknownst to any of us, and I didn't know any better, we don't sell snow cones or carnival rides. I figured she was there to buy a car.
Yeah.
And because, and my desire to sell a car and make money was stronger than my desire to stay dry. So people chuckled as I grabbed an umbrella and went out to wait on her. And she ended up being the soon-to-be ex-wife of an executive with Scott Paper Company down in Mobile, Alabama. And so it was one of those, thank goodness I hadn't learned how to prejudge yet. And that's the first one I literally sold from beginning to end, because nobody else evidently felt there was any promise to it. So and I've carried that story with me for 46 years.
Well, I tell you what, it's something. I grew up in North Queensland, Townsville, North Queensland, and what we would always say is, if it's a rainy day, okay, people are there to buy a car because there's so many other days of sunshine. If someone's coming out the rain, they're not wasting their time. They're there to buy the car. So it's amazing that prejudging still happens, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
So back when you were still selling on the floor, and before the Markee Group, do you remember one of the greatest days that stood out for you? Any time when maybe you're a manager or still selling that stood out?
I guess one of the things that stands out in my mind was prideful moments was working with a team of people. I was a GSM of a Mazda store at the time. And we had, you had the tent sales, whether it's at the Civic Center auditorium or fairgrounds or whatever. And we had a good plan. We had high energy. We had maybe bend the rules just a little bit, but hey, we're in the motor trade business, right? But and we actually were the smallest dealership at this offsite, 16 dealerships.
Sorry,
we went with a plan. We had a high energy, great team members like Jim McDavid. You might remember that name. He was my F&I manager at the time. That would have been about 28 years ago.
Wow.
33 years ago. And we went and we came back with the trophy and the sales and the gross and high five and made we rubbed a few people the wrong way, but it resulted in a phone call from my eventual boss saying we need that kind of energy. So it all panned out.
All panned out. So you were actually putting leaflets on people's cars then, and
well, heaven forbid, you're not supposed to do anything aggressive, right?
Yes.
Let's act like bankers or something, but let's just let people ease into the auditorium and give them a nice. Well, we had a couple of ladies and people planted out on the parking lot that would come out and greet and hand an 8.5 by 11 color promotional piece, telling them, walking them through it. Hey, this is pretty special. Be sure to ask about this extra cash too. And I got called up front a couple of times, but it was okay. It was worth it.
It was worth it. Brilliant. Okay. Now, listen, this is a shameless plug for our first 90-day sales fitness program. And I know in the Markee Group, you've actually got your first 90-day boot camp. So maybe it's a shameless plug for both of our products there. But
thank you.
We often say in the first 90 days, we learn the skills, good and bad, that last with us for the rest of our selling career. Well, definitely in the motor trade. Richard, can I ask you, is there anything that you learned in the first 3 months that's as relevant today as it is when you started the motor trade 40 odd years ago?
Absolutely. I mentioned a while ago about I was blessed to be hired by a gentleman who taught us how to sell a car. So often, people get hired in the first couple of days. If they don't get some traction pretty quick, doubt starts creeping in. And if there's not any training and developing going on, then the doubt increases. But the first 90 days for me was he taught us how to sell a car, and I think it was 10 steps or whatever the case may be. But, the walk around in the demo drive is a difference in somebody having an interest in some information and having to have the vehicle. I started with a gentleman that taught us how to sell a car, pop the hood, the fuel door, the trunk, do a feature benefit advantage presentation, sticks with me today. So actually flipping the needle from the logic to the emotional side of the brain. And I'm sure we'll talk later about the internet, investment of time in the internet. But back then it was capture and hold their attention, start, navigate around the car, feature benefit, run 70, 80% demo because you are determining the sequence of events, and make it interesting, capture, hold their attention. So what I learned the first 90 days sticks with me today, and I'm able to make suggestions in the training. I pull so much from what I learned in my first 90 days and starting with the right guy.
Yeah. So he definitely sounds like a mentor at the time. His name was?
Joe Hardman.
Joe Hardman. Listen, other than Joe, did you have any other mentors along the way that really stood out that you learned so much from?
I've learned from a lot of my managers. You know, when such as Jim McDavid, that runs the McDavid Group, and products and services and F&I, and just he and a select group of others that were on the same page, that were able to, when the bell rings in the morning, school starts, it's brief, stay energized. You know, I guess there's just a couple of people. One of them, I still to this day, he's been retired for a while, but for about 35, 40 years, he sends me a positive mental attitude. We call him a PMA. We actually provide these as tools for dealerships, for their salespeople, you know, to touch base with customers throughout the year in a very, very well-received manner. And I just got one from him again the other day, and he's been retired for 15, 20 years.
Wow.
I forgot how we got to that, Skippy.
Yeah, there's people along the way that really,
that influenced. Yeah, I'm sorry. He influenced me because, you know, talking about Jim Rohn, The Art of Exceptional Living, and Ziegler. I mean, you get Zig Ziglar and all these people. He got me involved in self-development. I spent 80% of my drive time for about 12 years in the car listening to educational, motivational, inspirational, things of that nature. So that gentleman, Phil Ward, he really touched me. And I still listen to things today that take me here instead. I don't watch the news.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing but doom and gloom there so many times. So listen, I'm always intrigued. How does someone like you and I, okay, you were in the motor trade, you started selling cars. How does someone, I take it you, well, actually, I haven't even asked yet. Where did you progress to in the motor trade? From selling cars? Where did you go from after that, Richard?
Well, I sold cars for about 3.5 years. And again, fortunately, somebody taught me how to sell a car and to determine the sequence of events and increase the probability of a sale. And after 3.5 years, I was asked to take a new car manager job at a small Toyota store. And I did that for a few years and eventually evolved into F&I, and then a used car manager, general sales manager. And then before David and I launched the Markee Group, he was a corporate recruiter and trainer for the Bullard organization, a big dealer group. Mm-hmm. And I was the general manager of a Honda store. And so actually it was so much of what I learned. I'll even go back to the first 90 days. So much of what I learned by being involved and connected and listening to I didn't specifically go out seeking to be a serious student of the industry, but fortunately I had something that that helped me become a serious student. I learned from everybody. And so actually it's amazing. You're bringing so much to light right now about how much of my makeup, so much of the content, so much of what I want to convey to people to build a career. You have really allowed me this morning to say so much of it was impactful from the very beginning.
Well, it always amazing people like us who are the trainers, and this was what I asked to start with. That what's the motivation? I always wonder. Do you see someone else and think, "Wow, I could do that"? But listen, right from the start, you were listening to tapes all the time. I imagine it was cassette tapes back then on Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and these great educators. What was your motivation for you and David to start the Markee Group then, and giving up, I'm guessing, really good jobs?
Yeah, we weren't doing too bad, but you know, David and I talked for 1.5 years or 2 about different optional ways, business models, and different things to do, and they were all automotive related. Finally, my dealer, who still has about 7 franchises here where I'm local from where I'm speaking to you from, he sold the dealership. And when he sold the dealership, and David and I had already been talking, remember, and so both of us had some decisions to make, and they had nothing, but they didn't even have a lateral move for me as a GM at this organization. So it was just the perfect trigger. Things happened for a reason. I feel the timing was, it was the timing. When I look back, looks a little reckless because I had 2-month-old babies, right?
Babies, twins.
Twins. You met them.
Yes.
And you came down for NADA a long time ago. Matter of fact, I was talking to one of them the other day. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I said, do you remember the gentleman from the UK, Simon Bowkett, that was in the living room? Y'all were about 8, 9, 10 years old. He was, I think the only time you heard an accent similar to that was the gentleman that had the Discovery Channel, Irwin.
Steve Irwin.
She goes, you're kidding. I said, yeah, I'll be talking to him tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
But anyway, David and I did talk about it for a while. And then all of a sudden we let that serve as kind of a sign that it was time to do it. And so in 96, we just went ahead. And of course, everybody said, you're nuts, you're crazy. And some people even insinuated it's not going to work. And don't tell me I can't do anything. Don't tell me I can't sell them a service contract. Don't tell me anyway, you know how it is.
Yeah. That's the motivation. You need to do it.
That's some fuel and motivation right there. Always has been.
That's it. So listen, we did first bump into you at the NADA conference, and I just want to explain to maybe some of the younger people listening to this. The reason why we got along with you guys is you guys were the pioneers on bite-sized training. Okay, you had this program where you would send a videotape to a sales manager every week, and it would turn up in the post, and it was a short little training segment that was laser right to the point on a different idea. And I don't even know the name of the program. You come to me in a second, but what was it? Go on.
Success one idea at a time.
Success one idea at a time.
Yeah.
That was it there. And you guys really were the pioneers of that video training. Now, I'm going to say that especially in the motor trade, in fact, all training, it's all video training, one idea at a time training. Can you tell me about your motivation to come up with that success, one idea at a time program?
Well, I credit David with that, because David understood, for example, recurring income from like an insurance business or something, where you sell the ice instead of the refrigerator. You know, you sell the ice and the recurring income and things of that nature. But at the time, so it was a monthly subscription that we were focused on, selling the ice versus the fridge. Sell the fridge too, right?
Yeah.
But when you sell just the fridge, you got to find a prospect, close the prospect, prepare for the gig, travel, do the gig, and clean up after. Now I got to sell another refrigerator, you know, find another prospect. But anyway, it was, I credit David with that. And because at the time there were no shortage of trainers, you had Jackie Cooper and you had Joe Verdi and all of these. And they had these seminars, very good. I mean, some of them are the icons of the industry with training and all that. But they had these long continuous play videos of them putting on all day seminars for 2 or 3 days at hotels. It was great information, you know, and it was the go-to for a lot of people. But David, and we came up with that name by discussing it and building the model and everything. And it was success, one idea at a time. How do you eat the elephant? A bite at a time. Instead of these people going and drinking training out of a fire hydrant. You know what I mean? Let's feed them and develop them slowly. If you got an idea and it was the nucleus for a brief meeting. I used to joke about it, Simon, and talking to dealers and managers and say, it's the salespeople are agreeable to participate and pay attention, because it's one less 90-minute depression session hollering about who didn't lock the cars up. That was a joke.
Yeah, but
sort
so
of.
true.
But they got the point. They all chuckled, and a chuckle to me is a confession, you know, sometimes. But yeah, it was brief 15, some of them were 16, 17 minutes brief, but it was 15-minute videos, training in a box, train the trainer by him implementing this brief program. Salespeople were receptive because they get to come in, 15-minute video, talk about it, 30 minutes, they're out of there, right? And free to go use the ideas. Can you imagine getting somebody on a 15-minute video now? No,
Wow.
I don't think so. So that's why we even developed 2-minute drills. We got over 122-minute drills, because that's 6 minutes isn't that long, but 2 minutes is even shorter.
Well, the way we explain that is, let's say that your salesperson or your service advisor, you have a whole lot of ideas we need to get into their brain, and their brain is a sponge. The ideas is this glass of water. If you throw that glass of water at the sponge, sure, some of the water will get in the sponge, but the vast majority is going to end up on the table, the floor, and everywhere, because it's too much. But if you get the same sponge the brain, and you drip feed it bit by bit, that sponge will absorb all of the water there. And that's what that micro learning does, doesn't it? It just
I love that
feeds it
analogy.
in all the time. And it's your fire hydrant analogy there. And look at this, guys. We got to apologize. Two trainers, okay, two training companies there. Of course, we're going to talk about what actually sticks the best. And we just know, well, I know in our business, it actually works by drip feeding the training all the time there.
Can I mention something?
Of course you can.
And you're right. Brief, laser-like, succinct messages where you can, but you must have management involvement.
Yeah.
For managers, not, and the reason I say that is you can watch a video. You can watch a video and print the course material to review later. You can watch a video, print course material, build your training manual, take a test to make sure there's comprehension. Too often, and we have to keep revisiting with clients, managers need to watch this too. And then because they need to be on the same page, but not only that, it needs to be discussed with the salespeople.
Yeah.
The succinct message shared by all, everybody's on the same page where you can put some teeth into it, get ideas from your students, the other students of the training, so they could be part of the solution created where there's buy-in for forward movement on, but it's, I didn't mean to get off of that tangent so much, but the brief, succinct, laser-like messages discussed with continuity about moving forward on all the topics and subject matter, what's most important to that particular dealer at that time, the opportunities or challenges they're faced with. Everybody should always get on the same page with these brief, succinct messages. Put teeth in it, talk about how it relates to your particular culture of your environment, and keep moving instead of a 3-day seminar.
Well, I got to say, it's we go in and do dealer visits, and our dealerships we work with for programs all the time. So many times it's our sales manager, our service manager, we need to turn into the trainers, because they're the people training people day in, day out, deal by deal by deal. What we need to do is give them the information to be able to load their lips, load the salesperson lips on what to go out and say. So I hear you on that one. It definitely is the managers need to buy into any training program. So dealer principals, listening to this, people owning dealer groups, general managers, it's your management team that really need to be the trainers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very true.
Listen, over the time in the motor trade, okay, Markee Group from 96, in the motor trade 46 years, you must have seen the great dealerships out there, the good dealerships, and maybe the ugly. So can I ask you, what do you think separates the good dealerships from the great? Or sorry, I should say it the other way around. What separates the great from just the good?
I think it's having standards for employment. I think it's having strong standards, undeviated from structure in the environment. You know, it's standards for employment that are etched in stone, structure for continuous learning and performance, key performance indicators being met by everybody. I think accountability. I think that's the difference, because if it's a Wild West in any fashion at all in a dealership, there's just going to be this. If you have structure and accountability without structure, people are out of control, right? But if everybody's held to the same high standards, you have standards of performance. If they're revisited on a regular basis, I think what you're doing is you're creating professionals who feel real good about the organization that they're working for. But so I guess the difference is, because I have some dealer groups, and those that don't play, they're fair but firm. They're clear in their message and their mission. They give everybody on the team the best chance to succeed. Their managers are held accountable for all of the performance indicators for all the people. Training is huge at these organizations. So I really think structure, standards, accountability, and training develops the whole team.
That's it. That's it. It's I just say it's the culture that these dealerships, these dealer groups have as well, that really punch above their weight. You walk in there, it's kind of like walking into a restaurant. Richard, have you ever seen you walk into a restaurant and before you've seen a menu, you know if you're going to have a good meal or not sometimes. And it's the atmosphere, it's the people. Isn't it the same with a great dealership? You walk into the dealership and it's the culture that you can feel it before you get there. You think, you know what, this manager, okay, whoever owns this group, they're just on it. And it is that structure stuff you're talking about. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. But listen, as a couple of trainers here, I want to ask you a question. We both train lots of brand new people to the industry. And every now and then I get people saying, oh, I seen Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. I want to be like him. I've just seen Andy Elliott and all great training. I've never been on any of the training from either of those gentlemen. Okay. I see some of the social media clips there. And I always say, I want to get your views. I say to the young salesperson, really? You want to be like the Wolf of Wall Street? And nothing against the man. I don't know the guy, but he made his money by ripping off pensioners. He made his money by selling shares. You've seen the movie. He's selling shares in stocks that weren't the best. He did it back in the 1980s, okay? This is 2024. Anyone can sell one car. We don't want to do that. We want to sell people the second car, the third car, their family and friends' cars. I just want to get your view on this. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Sell them a car, get rid of them, on to the next. Is there a place for that in the modern motor trade? And
go ahead.
And it sounds like I can say that Mr. Jordan Belfort, if you listen to this, Mr. Grant Cardone, listen, I've met Grant many a times there. I don't want to directly knock those guys, but it's just some of these guys I think maybe are picking up the wrong image from social media. Can I get your views on that?
Yeah, and some of the people that you're referring to or that pop into our minds that we're careful not to, because a lot of them are great promoters.
Yeah.
And they're the hype. Jordan Belfort, where does that get you? Okay.
Yeah.
He didn't have any friends that weren't also doing time. Okay. So, but the hype can be short-lived. It's kind of like Zig Ziglar used to say about enthusiasm. Everybody needs enthusiasm, and but it doesn't last. That's why we recommend, like bathing. That works too, but we recommend you do it every day. All right. So you got to stay enthused. But if it's a short-term hype deal,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm jumping in there too. I don't know who it was. You might be able to tell me. I think it was Jim Rohn said, motivation is great. But if you motivate a fool, what do you have? A motivated fool. Okay. I think there is a place for motivation. I really do. And please don't knock that. But it's got to be more than just hype, hasn't it?
Yes, it's got to be substance. It can't be short-lived, because then you got to just keep piling in. But you're talking about Jim Rohn, The Art of Exceptional Living. I must have listened to it 80 times, cassettes in my car. The Art of Exceptional Living, you get paid based on the value you bring to the marketplace. I don't mean to get off on this tangent, but it's kind of relevant. You get paid based on the value you bring to the marketplace. And if you're a manager, a dealer, a general manager, salesperson, you get paid based on the value you bring. And if a manager is developing his people, if he's getting his job done through the people, if he's taking people places they couldn't have fathomed they could go, you see, that's not short-term hype.
Yeah.
Right. That's permanent. And you're actually, when you change people's professional lives, you're going to change their personal lives. That's a legacy I would wish more people would take on and be challenged by, because the hype, short-lived. Every day can't be a circus. It's got to be balanced. Every day can't be a tent sale. You got to have energy. Yeah. But what you need is educated, professional people with some inspiration and some vision. And I don't mean to, you didn't ask about this, but part of what makes a great dealership and a good dealership is a lot of the people, they assimilate the reality that goals are very important. And it makes me think about J.C. Penney said, show me a stock clerk with a goal and I'll show you a man that can change the world. Show me a man without a goal, and I'll show you a stock clerk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
So
leadership is it's an ongoing process to develop people, not just get them all excited for a couple of days.
So true, so true. It sounds like we're knocking some of those there, and again, I think people knowing us well enough, there is definitely a place for that there, and it's just as long as there's substance there. We've had lots of other speakers here that are talking about the substance. Give me what's going to help me sell more cars, make more profit, sell more finance, improve the service department. Yes, motivation, enthusiasm is important, but give us the tools to do it as well. But listen, while we're having a go at the motor trade there, we know that more and more customers are starting their journey, the car buying journey, online now. It's all digital. Okay. How much research does the average customer do now before they walk in, phone in, or email a dealership? It's over 20 odd hours. So with that in mind, the road to a sale, is it still relevant?
Certainly. It really is. And I hate to hear sometimes that inclination people have to abandon the road to the sale, thinking that it's just a competition on the internet. And because people buy from people. And I think 80-90% of the people, it's going to be, my opinion, it's going to be a long time before a majority of people do their whole transaction online. I think people, myself included, I want to go see. The color on the internet is not necessarily what it's going to look like in person, or by going to a dealership, I'm able to research my options. I think a lot of people are finding, because of the evolution of a more professional environment in dealerships today, I think once they get to the store, they realize in short order, they're not really, they're not in danger. You know what I mean? I think that personal connection is very important. But once you greet a customer and you already know what the plan is, you know what your road to the sale is, I think that's the difference in a great dealership and a good and a not so, is their team that has not abandoned the road to the sale. I think that's given up some accountability right there. I think I need to greet a customer. I need to sit down and slow down and have a counseling session where I show I have a genuine interest. See, that's the part of the plan. To have a genuine interest in providing a good service. Money follows service. Show I have, and you know, in pulling a car around and popping the hood, the fuel door, and the trunk, a lot of people don't do walkarounds as much anymore. And if they do, certainly they don't on a used car. I just strongly believe in what I learned a long time ago. And if somebody thinks it's antiquated, okay, that's fine. But to me, you greet a customer, you counsel a customer, you drop their arms, showing they're not in danger. You show you have spent adequate time performing a professional and thorough and educational walk around feature benefit presentation. You run 75-80% demo because you have determined with much success the sequence of events that take place. You don't have a road to the sale. What are you going to do? You're going to go walk out there and look at the car? Let's go drive it. Go ahead. Come back. Let's pull a bureau. See if y'all can agree on numbers. I think you need to spend adequate time with the road to the sale and a feature benefit presentation. Flip the needle from logic to emotional side of the brain. You need to sell service before you even write the deal up. But anyway, I just strongly believe that the road to the sale is not passé. And those that have abandoned it and they take shortcuts, number one, they're not going to sell as many and they ain't going to hold as much gross, and they're not going to build a relationship that they can nurture long-term for repeat and referral, which is great. If you had people across the board doing that, then the dealership is recession-proof in their future.
Well, we've all seen that after COVID-19. It was the same in the US. There was a limited supply of vehicles. I mean, we couldn't get semiconductors, blah, blah, blah. And the process, the road to sale process, call it what you want, it went out the window. I think the process was, hey, do you have the car available? Great. Okay, do you want it now? If not, I've got 4 other people who want it. And you know what? It was shelling peas. But Richard, those days are gone now, aren't they? They're absolutely gone. And you know what? The people who forgot good sales process, okay, or never learned sales process because they started the motor trade after COVID-19, I can tell you, they're the ones that are struggling now in 2024. Get back to sell the car before we sell the deal. Get back to sell yourself before you sell the deal. Just selling the deal first, the deal second, the deal third. That may have worked when we had more people than we had cars. But you know what? It's we got to slow it back down now.
Well, the ball's in the, and we're training the consumer that the ball's in their court, because now all of a sudden we're, all kinds of drag, push, and pull, and 8,500 cash back and things like that. Now all of a sudden, now the dealers are in competition with each other. We went from, during COVID, the customer would come in and say, "How long would it take for you to get me this?" You know what I mean? They're not having, their demands aren't quite as strong as outlandish for the trade-in, the payments, the interest rates, and the sale price and things of that nature. And a lot of people way over addendum and things of that nature. But the whole game has changed. The sad thing is when you meet somebody that has never been on the other side of the COVID, where you're taking orders, all of a sudden they get hired to be a sales representative when it was everybody was a lay down basically.
Yes.
And pretty much, and it was taking orders. Now all of a sudden the real world hits and they're going, "What have I gotten into?"
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, that's why, what's one of the most common requests you have or statements you get? I know for us at the Markee Group, emailed and phone calls say, "We got to get back to the basics. We thought we were good. We printed money. We thought we were good, but reality has slammed us in the face. We got to sharpen our saw again." So that's pretty common comment.
A great advocate of the podcast is Sean Kelly, runs the Vines BMW Group around London. Real good operator, runs a brilliant business. And he said on the podcast, Simon, it's quite funny. When the times are really good, you get a manager to say, "Hey, look what I've done. Look how good I've done." When times go bad, the same manager says, "Look how bad the economy is." He says it can't be both. It can't be both. And he's dead right on that one there. And so many times people at COVID times were like patting ourselves on the back there. But now we've got to get back to the basics. We hear that all the time. It's actually do what we know we've always had to do. Yeah. It's not getting back to the basics. It's do what we've always had to do. I think that's the process there. So road to sale for me is definitely going to be around. Hey, listen, while we're talking about that, I'd love to get your views as well on in the States. Staff turnover with service advisors is a little bit more stable than car salespeople, but still service advisor, car salespeople, we still turn far too many of them in the motor trade compared to other industries. How do we stop this issue where we train people 1 month, they forget it the second month, and we end up sacking them the third? What advice do you have for slowing down that high staff turnover?
Well, some of them don't sack in the first 90 days and should, because they're looking for coverage, and I hear it all the time about you can't find anybody, work ethic, this, that, and the other. And I remember David we did a video a long time ago, and he was talking about recruiting and dating. It's kind of similar. He said the more dire the need, the lower the standards. But the reality is, I don't know how far back this goes, but I remember it says you need to hire slow and fire fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave Anderson mentions the same thing all the time, doesn't he? Brilliant educator.
Instead they're hiring fast and firing slow because they don't have any resolve to the issue they had before they even hired this person. But one of the biggest things, if they would just train the people, if you had that first 90 days and not, I trained them for 90 days, I got to go back to what I was doing. No, the training isn't something you did. It needs to be something you do. But the turnover part of what percentage, I don't know, is because they're not ever put on solid ground. They may train them a little bit, and then you put them out there and they start selling a couple of cars. Okay, I've got it. Manager goes, okay, he's got it. I'll get back to him. And the problem, the turnover, I think, is hiring standards. The fact that recruiting isn't an ongoing mission, that everybody understands how we're going to go about having fly eyes, looking for good people constantly everywhere you go. But the turnover is atrocious. It really is. I don't know if you've been in there. I go into rooms sometimes and I'm thinking to myself, what were they thinking with one or more of these new people? However,
yes,
shame on me for prejudging. Got two guys right now at one store in Albertville, Alabama. One of them did 50 cars in July. Now he is a solid citizen of the community, a young man. people, probably 80% repeat and referral, right?
Yep.
I had another gentleman sell 37 cars in July. Oh, yes, July. And he was one of those that was in the room. And I thought, what were they thinking? Right? He's late for the training meeting with the general manager in the room. He doesn't have a pen, so I had to give him mine. And I'm thinking, what the? And he did 37 cars. He got inspired. He got pointed in the right direction. He's online training. He a couple of classroom trainings. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying because of the spiritedness of that environment, because it's structure, there's accountability, and they don't play. You play by the rules, or you play in the ground, but on the grounds. But long and the short of it is, there is a lot of turnover. We do need to hire slow, fire fast, but we need to look ourselves in the mirror. Joe Bullard told me one time, and I was a GM of the Honda store, and he's training me on what to look for in the financial statements and things of that nature. I was a new GM, and he said, Richard, I think he got it from a 20 group or something. He said, your turnover's a little bit, and this has to do with the recruiting and the retention of salespeople. He said, before you let another employee go, parts, service, sales, all I'm asking you to do is look yourself in the mirror and say, have I done everything humanly possible to help that person succeed? And if you cannot say yes, then you owe it to them and you owe it to the organization to spend more time with that person to make sure there's not a diamond in the rough there. He said, but if you can say, yes, I have done everything humanly possible, do them a favor, do us a favor, and let them go. He said, everything's good. The numbers are good and this, that, and the other. But he was training me to what to look for and what to track. And I've carried that with me in all the leadership, the management sessions and things of this nature that we do. Look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, have you done everything humanly possible to help that person succeed? And I share that with dealers about their managers too. Yeah. These managers haven't necessarily been pointed in the right direction, been given the right adequate training and things of that nature. So, it's all the way across the board as far as turnover goes.
So, like I said, in the modern world, then, you think there's still a place for car salespeople, or are we the dinosaurs, Richard? Is it all going to be click and collect, and that's the future? I know that you've got Carvana over there. You've got these. You don't have to speak to a salesperson. You just go to your big vending machine, and the car turns up. Are we going to be around in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, Richard?
My opinion, strong opinion, yes, we will. I don't think there's going to be a wholesale change. I think that there's always going to be, and it's going to be growing, percentage of people that will proudly avoid a dealership and tell their friends about it. I think that they like that and have it delivered. But I think right now, 80, 90% of the consumers today would rather go to the dealership. They want to eyeball it, see what their other options are. Face it, the color's not going to look the same on the car than it did on the internet. But the long and the short of it is, the old statistic is, 70% of the people are going to end up selecting something other than their first request once they get in the mix and once they determine what the packages really are and things of that nature. But I know I want to go to a dealership and I want to see the vehicle, drive the vehicle, and have an interaction with somebody that's going to be accountable for seeing everything through. I just don't want it showing up in my driveway. And I think a majority of the people, they talk about and maybe genuinely have a little bit of caution about going to the store, but because of the evolution of the more professionalism in dealerships, I think once they get there, they see they're not in danger and they'll follow the lead of a good professional salesperson. So no, I don't think it's going to be all click. I think we've got a good 15, 25 more years before it's even close to 50-50. If it ever reaches that.
Last figure I seen was still less than 5%, I think was the last NADA number that was coming out of the States. And I think that, don't quote me on that. This is where people on the podcast, Richard, I'll get the message saying, no, it's 7.8% or whatever, but it was still low numbers there.
I'll say this. I think 86% of statistics are made up on the spot.
I think you're dead right, sir.
Like that
86.7, I think, maybe. Okay.
Okay.
That's it. I love it. So listen, tell us a little bit about your company. What's a day in your life at the Markee Group look like? Or maybe a month life? Are you all just digital online stuff? Are you out in stores still? Tell us about your business, Richard.
Still going to stores. And David has retired. David was, what a contribution. I mean, we've got over 1,000 the videos on the platform, and David spearheaded most of those. I handled the management and leadership, but it's so much online now. A majority of our focus and everything is providing a service for our clients that are online. We've got dealers, individual dealer groups, things of that nature. And we just want a day in the life or a week in the life of us as our team, making sure that everybody's taken care of, that the powers to be are informed about the successes, and the maybe an opportunity for them to provide some encouragement for some people. As far as monitoring the success of our programs within a dealership or dealership group, I still love to go to stores, not like I used to in quantity. Airports, hotels, I still do, but I don't do it anywhere close to the degree David and I used to. It was a half a full-time job right there, but mostly just monitoring the business success of our clients, accommodating those that are coming out saying, we got to get back to the basics, and getting them started again. I'd say 80% of our clients are people that have done business with us in the past that they're going, we got to get back to what works. But as in your case, going to dealerships and been doing it the whole 28 years and still doing it today helps me keep my finger on the pulse, and finding out what the challenges and opportunities are. And so basically we run our office here in Daphne, Alabama, and I'll travel locally. Yes. Drive time, windshield time, got no problem with, and an occasional hotel and airplane. But that's pretty much it. And we're not spread thin. We have a, because it's so online, and Skippy, I want to mention something to you. 28 years ago, we had a team of 4 salespeople sending out 10 VHS tape samples a day. Wow. Shrink wrap with popcorn to separate and differentiate us from all the other people came out of the woodwork to provide training, right?
Yep.
And in that, it was, and we used to call them the Digi-Sisters. Had 3 ladies and my brother, who's still with me today, 26 years later. They would send out 10 packages, and on the 3rd day, they'd start calling. We call them the Digi-Sister. Did you get it? Did you watch it? It was great, wasn't it? Did you get it? Did you watch it? Let me tell you what's on it. I want to get out of your way, but don't you dare keep this most common objection response from your salespeople. Anyway, I'll call you back in about a week. I mean, we had a process going with the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And then we evolved. I know this is getting a little bit off target, but I just remember there was a guy that called me after about 7, 8, 9 years. We ended up with 64 monthly tapes, a subscription. And he said, Richard, I was just wondering, you got any 8-tracks for my car? I don't even know if you know what an 8-track is.
I know an 8-track.
Anyway, he humbled me, and I went, all right, smart Alec. I said, I get it. So we evolved into the DVDs and the audio CDs and things of that nature. But with the online, there's not as much activity. But well, you really took me back in these discussions today about those early days.
Very good. So let's go back to the people listening to this podcast who some advice, and I'm going to word it this way. If you bought your own dealership, Richard, your own dealer group, can I ask you, what would you focus on in the first 90 days? And what I suppose I'm driving at here, if there's a manager listening to this, or is a dealer principal general manager, what would they focus on if they had to go to a new business? So can I ask you, if you did buy your own dealership, what would you focus on in that dealership in that first 3 months?
2 things. People and processes. The people and the processes. You're going to be paying a little bit of attention to everything else, inventories, waste, things of this nature. But first thing I want to do is give every employee there a fair assessment, a process of getting a fair assessment about this person, their purpose. Are they going to be a long-term team member? Are they going to be are they going to complement the environment with their existence and their professionalism and effectiveness? So I'm going to evaluate the people first, all while evaluating the processes. Because once we feel like, you got to get the spokes tight. And if the people ain't right, the spokes ain't tight, right? And then your processes have got to be firm, and you've got to have the people to partner with you for those processes. those are the two things: evaluating and assessing the people, the processes, and everybody gets on a mission and moves forward, building the culture that creates a great workplace, that we can strive aggressively to reach our true potential doing business the right way. So.
That's great advice. Great advice. Okay. Do you have any tips, ideas that someone could go back and put in place today, right now, to help them sell more cars, put more profit into the deal, or maybe improve the service department? It's just a takeaway. Have you got any takeaways someone can take away from this episode of the podcast?
And repeat that. Do I have? If I go ahead.
Yeah. Any tip or any idea the salesperson or a service advisor, either or, that could go back and put in place today to help them sell that extra car or improve that service department? What one idea would you like them to take away from this podcast?
Communication skills, to work on your communication skills. And I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about, or I believe you would. Everything doesn't have to just be a transactional thing where we're processing people in the service lane like cattle, right? To keep our promises, commitments, and get the car back out that day. It's if you just slow down and realize that the greatest gift you can give another is the purity of your attention. And really, when you have an opportunity to interact with a consumer, be it sales or a service customer, is to slow down for just a moment to speed it up overall. Make sure that their takeaway is going to be, this is a comfortable place to be. It's not just a rapid fire transaction to get to the next one. I think that we need to make that connection with consumers with good eye contact, good listening skills. We need to ask the right questions, truly listen, show them we have a genuine interest in providing a good service. So the takeaway is not a silver bullet to slam no more car deal or go up 1/10 of an hour per RO on your 25 ROs you're overburdened with every day. It's communicate with that consumer. Play well with a team internally, but my takeaway is just be a better communicator, and trust will take over. So,
Richard, I've really enjoyed this, and it's been too long since we got you on the podcast. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Now, people listen to this. How do they get hold of you? What's the easiest way to get hold of Richard Keeney?
Well, you can go to the website, markeegroup.com. No dash in this one. Markee Group, MarkeeGroup, and Keeney at markeegroup.com. And my cell number, 251-680-6633. But the easiest thing is just go to the Markee Group website, and it'll have contact opportunities. It'll have free demos, free brief demos for service, sales management and leadership, salespeople. And I invite anybody to go to the site, and if you have any questions, give us a shout. Okay?
Richard, really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for that.
Thanks, man.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.